I'm thinking maybe this video should finally be the exception to the rule. Finally make a video that's not about hair loss. What do you think? Should I do it? Oh really? You still want me to do another hair loss? Okay, if that's what you want. You're the boss. Alright, so our good friend Angry Greek Manyo had this to say on the video I made called Hair Loss, Pro Wrestlers Don't Need Hair. Which, by the way, I make a point to make 3 videos a day because that's what keeps my subscribership and views up. If I ever do less than that, it comes down. So I have to keep in accordance with those little green arrows on my app. I will admit though, the wrestling one was me cheating the system. I released it at midnight to see if anybody would notice. But I only did 2 videos earlier that day. So it's still averaging 3 a day, which is what you, the free market, want. You gotta have your 3 videos a day about hair loss. And again, I know that if I don't do them, I become less relevant. So, as a whole, this is what you're requiring of me. Our good friend said this, quote, "Girls don't care much about hair. They don't want a partner more good looking than them anyways. People need to grow up. I have a huge nose, and I can go out with the prettiest girls I meet solely based on confidence," end quote. Now, I will say this. I have never seen or met Angry Greek Manyo, but I already believe him. I already believe him. Whereas others could say, man, I've got this big nose, and I'm starting to see signs of hair loss. I don't have enough confidence to ask that girl out. And so imagine if you're a different guy that's starting to lose your hair, and then you see this guy, as he's putting it himself, he's got a big nose, and maybe he's encountering some hair loss. He goes, asks the girl out. She says yes. So it goes back to what I like to say. Show me a balding man who can't, and I'll show you a balding man who can. Or that has a self-proclaimed big nose. So I'm very grateful for this comment because it's always a good topic to explore. Immediately what it reminds me of is classic sitcoms, you know, especially in the 80s and 90s, where you'd have the stand-up comedian who had some decent success, and then he ends up getting his own sitcom that lasts, you know, 4 or 5 seasons or whatever. And who do they pair him with? They typically pair him with this petite, pretty little wife. And the comedian himself doesn't need to be fit or good looking. He just has to be funny. And it's already assumed that he is because he is, after all, a comedian. So what do? They want to well match this couple, don't they? They want to well match them, don't they? And so what they do is they make sure that the wife's thing is that she is the epitome of what most people will find pretty in magazines. And then the guy, as long as he's not too good looking, then, and now that I think of it, I'm trying to think of like funny looking. I'm trying to think of good looking comedians that are guys. I know they exist, I just can't think of one right now. Like, especially one that ever had a sitcom. They're these average looking guys at best. So they got to match them with the pretty girl for the wife. And I think there's a lot of truth in this, is that while in theory, the more attractive men get the more attractive girls, in theory, if it were on looks alone, in reality, we know it's about a lot of other stuff that I'm about to mention too. But before I get to it, it's like that pro wrestler video that I made to cheat the system last night, in that even when it comes to a good-looking man, it could be that he's not the action star or the romantic lead, but instead, you know, he's got more of the pro wrestler look or something like that. Or maybe he's the funny guy, and those things make him attractive beyond simply what would traditionally be seen as a good-looking guy. One more thing I'm thinking about right now. Well, he's a bad example because he's got a full head of hair, but the Chip and Joanna Gaines people. Obviously, you look at her and you think, might as well be a model. And then he's kind of goofy, but he's got a full head of hair. So I can't mention him because you'll say that that's why she went after him, because he had a full head of hair. So, all right. So what we'll do instead is I want to share with you 2 more things before I disappear, as this is the last video of today. Before you were born in 1986, there was a band called Genesis in which Phil Collins was the lead singer. And about halfway through his album that year in 1986, he had a song called Anything She Does. And this was from the album Invisible Touch. And here's a line from that song. Quote, "You know that in 20 years or more, you'll still look the same as you do today. You'll still be a young girl when I am old and gray." End quote. It just reinforces this concept that as men, we're not expected to compete with the beauty of the women we're trying to attract. In fact, I think it can definitely be a negative thing if that's your selling point, because then it's going to fade that much more. Like Angry Greek Man, you already said, girls don't care much about hair. They don't want a partner more good looking than them anyways. And that's something nearly word for word I believe that Robert has said more than once. So I think this is very interesting, because we can put so much emphasis on our looks when as men we're being judged by other things, which is an ongoing theme of this channel. Let me close by sharing what I did in an earlier video today when I talked about what makes a guy cool. Because remember, forget the hair, let's focus on being cool. How about that? You want the confidence you need to ask the girl out anyway, even if your hair is starting to thin or recede, or big nose, or too short, whatever it is. Remember those 11 things? And then I'm disappearing in a puff of smoke. Number 1, you got to be friendly. Number 2, you got to be competent. Don't be a moron, in other words. Number 3, you got to be trendy, desirable, attractive, unconventional, pro-social, which means you help other people, humorous, confident, emotionally controlled, and it says self-indulgent, which is kind of weird that that's on the list, but scientists determine that, not me. So there you go. I definitely agree with Greek Manyo. If men are putting much emphasis on their looks, then that's going to be a problem to begin with. That's probably going to be seen as unattractive to a lot of women, because they want a guy who's going to focus on those other things I just mentioned, especially the humor thing and helping other people. So it just shows that people tend to focus on the wrong things, just like that ongoing thing about me interviewing girls about what they really think about balding men. Insecure men who don't have an identity besides their hair are going to continue to say the girls lie. Meanwhile, confident men, even with big noses and thinning hair, are going to say, not my problem, I got this figured out myself. Not that I have a big nose, but my nose is pretty crooked. But I'm confident. Why? Because I got character.